Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our first day, I guess technically outside of our four walls at our house. I know some of you have already been outside your house, so we were just talking about that, the pre-panel, but want to welcome everybody. First things first, I woke up today and I got my hair cut, and so you can see I'm looking pretty trim here. So sorry for those of you who can't do that, but I get to cut my hair anytime I want. So anyway, the challenges of the COVID crisis, right? So what I want to do is I want to just kind of start off with the rules a little bit. We've done this before, so this was supposed to be a panel, obviously, in Wallingford at the farms, and we'd like to recreate that panel. So the panel typically will take questions either at the end or during. If you would, we'd like to take them during. So while we're not going to bring you in live, we are going to have you just hit that chat button at the bottom of your screen, and you can then put in a question to any question you want. We'll try to handle those questions kind of on a case-by-case basis, and I'll try to squeeze them in at the time that we think it's appropriate to squeeze them in. And we really, really invite the interactiveness here. We don't want to be a situation where we're speaking at you. We want to make sure that we're speaking with you and hopefully informing you. And the bottom line is when we're done with this, whether that's in hour, 90 minutes, we're set for 90 minutes. If it's going to be 90 minutes, then great. We want to make sure when you walk away in 90 minutes that you've got all that you need. So ask away and let's have some fun. So again, it's supposed to be a breakfast event. So grab your breakfast. I hope your breakfast looks a little more like this than the challenges of the COVID crisis, which make it look like this. So I hope that's not the case. So I'm going with the coffee today. With that, first, thank everybody. I thank everyone for being here. I know you've got a lot of these events. We all know you've got a lot of these events to go to, and we're hopefully going to make your time very worthwhile today. And I thank also SIOR, Connecticut, Western Mass, all the leadership, Bernadette, and all the efforts that you all have done to make this a very worthwhile time during the crisis. I know I've said it before, we've had to pivot from a face-to-face and a physical organization. We like shaking hands, but we've had to pivot from that. And I think, led by Art Ross and the entire leadership team, thank you so much. Thank you to our panelists. One of the things I know I'm always told is, wow, you must be incredibly slow. So, you must have plenty of time to do this. It could not be anything from the truth. We are all in our own way scrambling right now. We're all on our way trying to do business right now. We're trying to get in front of our clients right now. We're all trying to get in front of the things we need to inform our clients for what we look like coming out of this crisis as we're slowly getting out of the crisis. And I know all four panelists here are included in that. They're working like crazy to make sure they serve the people that they need to serve, albeit they're doing it in a different way. Thank you to our sponsors. I am going to read them so I don't miss them. Bank America, 10X, Community Investment Corporation, Gottfried Hoffman Associates, DeClercq Office Group, McDermott Reynolds and Glissman, Claris Construction, Savings Bank of Danbury, Petra Construction, PES Structural Engineers, and RD Cinto. I want to thank you all as well because you've needed to pivot as well, and appreciate hopefully that the type of content that we're putting out, that it's not the traditional, and we appreciate you being with us during that transition. Before we get going, I want to just send out all my thoughts, prayers, and condolences, and everybody's thoughts, prayers, and condolences for all that are affected, whose families are affected by this crisis, whose loved ones are affected by this crisis. I know a lot of these functions that we're on, these events that we're on, we all talk about the business effect, but we all know that the largest effect was to the ones we love. So we send out our thoughts and our prayers and the condolences for all those that were affected. So with that, like I said, we come back to Connecticut's first day of business. The initial prep call that we had with this group, let's just say it was very different than the second prep call. The first one was pretty staid. And when I say staid, I mean, a lot of it was predictable. It was to be informative from the standpoint of we had a lot of data, we had a lot of information behind us, a lot of case studies. That's why we have our 4 panelists here. And so we're able to kind of take a track on what we wanted to provide for content. And, you know, as they say, something happened on the way to the forum. It wasn't funny, but it did happen. And that happening has created a lot of crisis and a lot of challenges, but it's also provided us a lot of opportunities. I personally believe this event in the last 60 days and probably for the coming months, and we're all gonna, everybody can, it depends on how long it takes, everybody's personal opinion. But I do believe this is an unprecedented time for us from an opportunity standpoint. And so events like this hopefully give you some insight on how you can capitalize on that opportunity. I try to tell all of our people, listen, I don't think there will be a point in our life that we will have the opportunity that we have right now. So yes, there's a challenge, and this panel will talk about that challenge. We'll talk about also the opportunity, the changes in the opportunity moving forward. So with that, I'm going to present our panelists. So we have 4 very different personalities, and we have 4 very different projects, and we also have 4 very different projects that facilitate different customers. And so that way we can give you a nice cross section of very different adaptive reuses. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce all 4 of our guests first, and then we're going to let them individually go ahead and give a little insight as to who they are and also into their project. So here we go. We've got Brian Kench, who's the Dean of College of Business for the University of New Haven. We've got Larry Dooley, who's the owner for CG Management and co-developer of the Colt Gateway project. We've got David Salinas, who's the CEO and co-founder of District New Haven. And we've got Karen Leica, who's the principal of CPG Architects. Welcome everyone. Again, thank you for being here. We very much appreciate it. It's difficult enough sometimes to do a panel, but we're gonna do this online and it'll all work out. So everybody just kind of bear with it. Don't get too caught into the little hiccups. Let's just go with it and we'll figure it out. This should be a free-flowing conversation. So with that, I will introduce Brian Kent, who's our first panelist.
Thank you, Mark. I'd like to shout out to Frank Hurd, who's on the College of Business Dean's Advisory Board, and he connected me to this panel. So I think I'm here because I'm a user, right? So I didn't develop the project, but I'm the Dean of the College of Business at the University of New Haven. And we are at the Orange campus, which is a former Hubble Incorporated global headquarters in Orange, Connecticut. Hubble is still in Connecticut. I believe they're in Shelton, but we took over the property in I believe it's 2014. So case study as a user. So the property is at 584 Derby Milford Road in Orange, Connecticut. And Bernadette, if you want to go to the next slide. So this is, I joined the university in 2015, so this is prior to me joining, but this is what the property looked like. Frankly, in 2014, it was perhaps not in demand, but it is a mid-century modern architecture, which, as many of you know well, that is in demand now. And so the property was available, frankly, for a steal. I think we acquired it for $4 million. It's 40 acres in the heart of Connecticut, and we repurposed or reused the building. It's got 3 main blocks to it, and so we completely redid 2 of the blocks, and the 3rd block just able to make some minus modifications. So from the outside, it largely looks the same. The inside, it looks similar, but all of the officers that were there in the bottom middle photo there is the CEO office. That's as an example. That's a classroom at this time. Next slide. So we are, your typical bucolic, low density metropolitan statistical area campus, gorgeous in the fall. lights up beautifully in the evening. Frankly, that's the type of university that's in demand now, as in a post-COVID era where perhaps people are trying to move away from very high density locations. So we find ourselves, frankly, on the plus side of that equation as students are looking for this type of environment. Next slide. So what I'd like to show you is, how do you take a building that was perhaps a little slower, a little quieter, and really transform it into a university. The main campus of the University of New Haven is in West Haven. It's about 15 minutes away. There are shuttles that run every 20 minutes around the clock. I shouldn't say around the clock, from 7 o'clock through about midnight, 5 days a week, and then a limited shuttle on the weekends. Many students drive, they live off campus, and for some who are living in apartments off of campus, Orange, Connecticut, frankly, is a bit closer than the West Haven campus. There's a lot of parking available, so it's less stressful for the students coming to the business campus at Orange. And of course, it's just gorgeous. If you've been to the campus, it's a half-mile drive up that leafy driveway till you get to the main building. It's really a stunning view. So we host all of our competitions there. And so I've got a couple of slides of our freshman business plan competition, as well as other events. We do have facilities that you would need to support an independent location. So there's a cafeteria that was built, and it overlooks a pond. We reuse a boardroom, and that's our executive MBA suite down there, and that's where the College of Business holds its board meetings. Largely looks the same. There's a door that doesn't open anymore that goes to the helicopter deck on the roof, so those types of things have been blocked off. And of course, the offices have been reused, and so now they're faculty offices. And for the College of Business, about 2/3 of the faculty have their office out at the business campus. Next slide. And last, just we were highlighting sort of the COVID world, and another shout out to Frank. Frank's herd is up on the upper right corner of the screen as an advisory board member. So although we were running all of our competitions on the Orange campus, that campus is under a full lockdown. And so nobody can access it. The temperature has been dropped down to, 50 degrees and completely sealed off until we come back. But we've pivoted, and so there's, I think, a question later about how have you adapted, and we've gone through, we use Zoom and have been able to continue that high impact student engagement that the University of New Haven is known for, has been known for a century, and we're actually able to do it quite well via Zoom. So that's the short version, and happy to take any questions or wait till the end for questions, whatever the plan is.
Thank you, Brian. No questions yet. I haven't seen any specific here, so we'll roll on to the next introduction. Larry.
Hi, I'm the developer of Colt Gateway. Most of you have probably seen the dome on 91. We're probably one of our buildings. We have 10 buildings. The most iconic building is our East Armory that has the dome. And I put together some slides. You can see on the right, well, there's plenty of pictures of you could just kind of clip through. So that's the name of our project, Colt Gateway. And the top picture, the first picture in the center is actually a view from the rooftop of the South Armory. See that center photo? Sorry, I'm gonna have you flipping all over. But the center is the view from the South Armory. To the right is our East Armory. And to the left is our South Armory. That is a adaptive reuse of that building as a mixed-use building. So we're pretty much all about adaptive reuse. This was a slide that JCJ put together for us. I'm not this artistic. But you can see some of this they're pieces of JCJ's office in there, but also some of the roughness of the project before rehabilitation. We're part of what has been authorized as a National Historical Park. This again was a slide JCJ put together for another presentation, but you can see the original use up to the right-hand corner. That's the East Armory where JCJ's offices are now, and that's what they primarily did there. There were machinists here. To the left, that photo is a strike, and they're right in front of one of the brownstones that the National Park would take. The bottom photo to the left is our L-shaped building. The center photo is just kind of a sky view at the time, and then there's a historic rendering to the bottom. This is our campus now. These are the buildings that we have now. The one that looks the largest to the right is what we call the Sawtooth building, and it's actually not the largest building because it's a single story, and we have Insurity, a software company, in there with about 62,000 feet. We have the CREC, Greater Hartford Academy Arts High School, in there in the back with dance studios and classrooms. They also came into that. You can see a connector between that and the next building to the left, which is our South Armory building. That's actually the largest building, and that's 200,000 feet. We have 129 apartments there, but we also have fully carrier services, and I'll get into all of our tenants, but CREC's in there as well. We have Hooker Brewery in there with a patio. Go to the next building where you can see that's fine, you can look at this. This is the Google image of it. Where you see the dome, that's where JCJ is, and below that, where the skylights are, that's where I'm building apartments. The two small buildings in the center are the ones we're donating to the National Park Service. The building that is U-shaped to the left is the one I'm doing a second adaptive reuse from a CREC school to 26 additional apartments. And if you look to the lower left of this, that's the L-shaped building. And we have green boxes in that small standalone building just above it. To the left of that's our boiler house that still operates this day. And then you can see we have a reasonable amount of parking, but believe it or not, it's marginal, but it's enough. This is a picture of the East Armory back in the day. This is a picture of the East Armory now. Sorry, you just clipped through quickly, but you could see, whoa. Okay, this is JCJ Architects space. So when you looked at those earlier pictures talking about adaptive reuse, this is where those people were standing in front of the machinists that were building gun parts. This is where they were standing, in aisles down this exact space where JCJ now designs. This is a before and after of the same building from what used to be the back side of the building. It's kind of turned into the front. The front side of the building was obviously the river side, which is blocked off by the highway. And that's one of Congressman Larson's dream projects, is to drop the highway so we reconnect us to the river. And when you do look at the other side of this East Armory, which was in an earlier photo, you'll see that that was the front of the building, but now you just have Van Dyke Avenue, railroad tracks, and the highway. And that's something that a lot of people would like to see changed, including riverfront recapture. This is a before and after the U-shaped building. This is the one that's onto a second adaptive reuse. So the initial use of the building was Colt's headquarters. It was their office building. It was one that they built later in the 40s, and then we turned it into a school for CREC. They left. We have the Wellness Credit Union in there on the first floor. I'm turning the top two floors into apartments. This gives you a little indication of what it's like to go through an adaptive, well, not adaptive reuse, but going through a rehabilitation of a building like this. I think when you take a look at this, you see what you get left when you get done with the demolition and abatement. You pretty much have a hulking, in this case, concrete shell with some brick infills under the windows. That's what you're left with. Everything else needs to be replaced. All the infrastructure, all the walls, all the windows. Not to mention, you can see there was a lot of restoration required. Here's a before and after of our South Armory that we completed in 2015, I think, was when we actually finished the majority of the apartments. That one's the building with 129 apartments and fully carrier services and CREC schools, and then Hooker Brewery is in a patio on the first floor. This is just a list of the tenants in the South Armory. So we have the apartments I mentioned, Hooker Brewery, Foley, and some CREC schools that are completely separated and accessed through the back of the Sawtooth building. And that's why you see where Hooker Brewery's patio is there. Everything is completely separated. And that's one thing with the adaptive reuse of a place like this, 600,000 square feet, you're putting a lot of different uses together, and you have to figure out ways to make it work with a school, for instance, and then having Hooker Brewery there. How do you do that? And it's by cooperation with our tenants. These are the apartments that we finished in 2015 in the South Armory. They're currently 95% occupied. This is just a picture of the East Armory now. This is JCJ's space once again on the 4th floor of that building. Here is a back space. Believe it or not, this is their back office space. For Insurity, they expanded into the 3rd floor of the same building. These are our tenants that are in the East Armory. So Senator Murphy has his Hartford office there. Connecticut Innovations is just completing an office. They have a Hartford and New Haven office. Very important programs that they do with Connecticut Innovations to get money to small businesses. So they'll be here, which is pretty interesting. And CREC has a presence in the, has some black box theaters and some presence in the East Armory as well. Here's a before and after the East Armory from that side of the building. Here's a before and after JCJ space. We had to tear all the original wood floors out and reframe it because of, it was basically machine oil that was in the floors, and the only thing to do was take it out, clean all the masonry, clean the steel, and put in new floors. This is our Sawtooth building, so you can see why on the footprint it's huge, but it's a single story. And on the right-hand floor, you can see the South Armory behind it being 6 stories, why that's 200,000 square feet in this. But this is Insurity, and they've been here since 2005. They're a great company. And we're going to be working with them very closely to make sure we're accommodating them for what they need in this new world with their office space. But we're talking to all of our office people. So that building has CREC in the back space with dance studios and classrooms, and then you've got Insurity in the front space. And you can see that was a 2005 fit out. That's how long this place has been going, and we're talking about a renewal there and maybe redoing the office, and the timing could be very good with the new thoughts about office space. Green Boxes is in that standalone building. This is actually their space inside the building. This isn't something they designed for somebody else. This is their own office space, and they just did an amazing job. They use these systems called dirt systems. Amazing tenants. Tecton just moved into our L-shaped building. I wish I had photos of their space, but they actually finished it and started occupying the space in January, and now they haven't been able to occupy the space for the last month. And so hopefully they're coming back soon, but this is not their space. It's just their website, but their space came out. It was just amazing. And that was, again, a second adaptive reuse from a school now to an architectural office. And when I say an architectural office, slick as can be. Bear Design Group, another architect that we have in the L-shaped building, they came in what was supposed to be a temporary stay, and they have decided to keep staying here and sign a long-term lease. We're still talking to them, and they're interested in staying permanently. They were downtown, and they moved here. U-shaped building I talked about already. That's the one we have the wellness. Well, we'll probably say on the next slide, but those top 2 floors, that's our one tenant we have in there. But on the top 2 floors, that's where we're planning on putting 26 apartments. This is our latest project, the North Armory. This is a before and after. So I started this in 18. That's a photo to the left. And now you can see right now we're just finishing landscaping. And despite what you might read, we're doing very well there. And there was an article in the Hartford Business Journal that was a little bit off on that. Our June date, our target, was with me finishing the job in December, not April. So we're leasing like gangbusters, and we've been really amazed by the leasing activity. We expect to lease about 2 or 3 a month, and a week. And last week we leased 5. So it's been pretty amazing. And this is the entrance to the same building. And here's the apartments in that building, and you can see, I mean, we just finished them, so they have a little bit different finishes. This building's a little bit more industrial looking, and we left the exterior walls raw, and we just did a little different design. JCJ did the design of this building, and I think they did a fantastic job, considering you have to keep within the constraints of the historic exterior. You really can't spread your wings as an architect on the exterior of the building, if you will. You know, you have to keep within the National Park Service standards for credits. I just also wanted to add that adaptive reuse projects are all about partnerships, are all about the great people that come here that want to be at these cool industrial places. It's interesting because I think there's going to be a great place for a project like this with a lot. You saw our parking lot space, our apartments are large, and you look at the space we can offer even our commercial tenants. I think we're going to do fine, honestly.
Thank you. Larry, there was one question came from Richard Evans, and I'm not sure that, I think you were involved at the get-go, but it also was probably continuing. What are some of the challenges that you have with a historic rehab like that and working on the local level and the national, the federal level?
Well, going back to partners, first off, I can say all the way from the federal to the state to Hartford especially, the support that we've had, the help that we've had, it takes a lot of professionals. I'm telling you, I'm just a manager. I really am. And I'm not saying that modestly. I'm a manager of great talent. And we have talent in our leasing people. We have talent in our facilities guy here, but we also have talent outside that I have to use. So when you go to credit, boy, you have to have a great accountant that specializes in tax credits. You've got to have a specialized attorney for tax credits. So to even get those, now you've got the state and federals. When you do your design and you submit your designs, you have to submit these at the federal level. It's a Part 3 application, state it's a Part 5. And I'll tell you, they had a change up at the National Park Service of a different person doing the reviews, and they just had a different sense. So my consultant, I have to use a consultant for that. I can't get through that myself. He does all my applications. So it's a difficult process, but the only way you're going to get through it, and this is why there's an economy of scale to this thing, because you have to hire professionals. And then it ultimately comes down to the real estate professionals that bring in the tenants, our great commercial tenants, all came in with a real estate professional at their side. So but going back to the renovation, I had a heck of a time. You know, I think my leasing person, when they were saying we didn't meet our goal to hit 90% by June, they were trying to, look, I was supposed to finish the job in December. I didn't finish the job till April. They're not going to still hit June, I tell you right now, but they're doing a great job. But so one of the challenges on that North Armory, the last building you saw, were the windows, and they didn't want the operable windows and the way you needed to structure that with aluminum versus steel. So you get a lot of, they won't let you clean the brick. If you look at the picture, the brick is kind of still rough. They won't let you really clean it the way you would like to make it look a little bit newer, nicer, cleaner. So there's a lot of restrictions, and there's some architects that specialize in it, but my consultant is the one that works with the architect, and he knows what they want.
Interesting. And the other question was, has Chris Murphy paid his rent? No, I'm kidding. We don't want to know. We don't want to know.
I'm not allowed to say. But I think the federal government's doing fine. I'll say that. Okay. For the moment.
No deferment needed. Okay, I got it. Thank you. David. I got to unmute there. Where is David?
There you go. All right.
There you go. Welcome.
Sorry, I was trying to make sure that my son, who's stomping around in the room next door, wasn't heard by the group and interrupting Larry. First of all, Larry, I've never seen the Cole project from that vantage point. I've only seen it sort of driving by. Wonderful project, unbelievable. Very nice.
For the nickel tour.
It was beautiful. I'd love to see what the more expensive tour looks like. So my name is David Salinas. Thanks for having me. Our project is District, the address 470 James Street in New Haven, which was originally a bus depot. In the 1950s, a private company came and built a bus depot. After most of the bus companies went defunct, the states bailed them out. and eventually Department of Transportation became the owner of the bus depot. So what you see behind me is actually the original offices for CT Transit. And those are weeds. Those are not small trees or bushes or beautiful landscaping. That was what it looked like. They actually were much higher when we took over the building. In roughly 2000 and I want to say around 2007, the DOT decided to build a new facility, that this facility was no longer useful to them, that they needed something more modern. And they just picked up and moved down the street in a brand new facility. And they left this, I believe they auctioned it 1 or 2 times in hopes that someone would purchase it. Unfortunately, because of the era of which it was built and the use case being the bus depot, they never got any bids on it. There was expected to be a brownfield. There was also some questions about the water table because there's a river behind it. So I don't have a presentation, but instead I'm going to do this in Zoom backgrounds. So you'll see, so this is the picture before, this is another angle of that front building. And now you start to see the building to the left of the 2-story building is the actual bus garages. And I'm going to show you an overhead shot of that. And what you see here is, actually over here is the 2-story building that I was just showing you. Then there's about 100,000 square feet of building here. That's where the buses used to pull in and out of, and that was just a garage. So they used to just pull in, park the buses, change shifts, shut down for the day, and then they just pull out of the other side. And then this facility right here that you see behind my hand was actually the mechanic facility. So we eventually bid on I think it was the 2nd or 3rd time that it went up for auction or for RFP. The state and the city of New Haven worked together to put the property up for RFP. We bid on it and offered this idea of an early stage business campus that would become something very impactful to the community, very impactful to the economy, to economic development, and so on. Something very new with a pretty cool concept. We did purchase the building for $1 from the state of Connecticut. It was a pretty bad brownfield, so right under the mechanic facility was years and years and years of oil and free product that had leaked out of old rusted containers and tanks that were buried in the ground or dropped onto the concrete and then seeped through into the ground. So the easiest way to remediate that issue was to tear down and to demolish that side of the building, go into the grounds and actually pull out the oils. So we pulled out several thousand gallons. Luckily for us, the oil was pretty concentrated under that building and never actually went under the main facility. So we were able to keep the main facility intact and put in some precautions under that part of the facility. So today, I'm just going to jump around a little bit now. Today, this is what the property looks like. It's a beautiful night shot that was taken by our drone photographer. So you can see how we've torn down that back building, put in a tremendous amount of parking. We've got parking for 300 people. In the shadows here, you can start to see some, if I had a green screen, it would be better. There's a restaurant now, which has a brewery in it. That's the Bear Smokehouse and Brewery in partnership with Black Hog. We have an amphitheater. We have a walkway that goes along the beautiful river there. And then the facade of the building, and we've changed the orientation so that you come in on this side here. As you go, start to see what the beer garden looks like. We had our first summer last year. We've run gas lines throughout the entire beer garden. So we have heat and fire pits that are, we're able to keep running through the early spring and late fall so that we can extend the season of the outdoor space. Obviously, given the situation right now with restaurants needing outdoor space and only being able to operate out of outdoor space, we've positioned this restaurant for success. Really partly because we knew that there was no product to begin with in the city of New Haven, or very little product to begin with that offered this type of environment. So we sort of jumped in to create it. And then you can see some other shots of of the beer garden at night, and the beautiful garage doors that open up. So this facility where the restaurant and the beer garden is all new construction. This is about a 7,000 square foot facility building that we built here for the restaurant, and we designed it in-house and constructed it using our general contracting team, Urbane, who's also a partner in district. And it's just been a beautiful facility. Well, you know, it's sort of a destination because it's not downtown New Haven. If you're coming to district, you're just coming to district. If you'd like, you can walk up State Street to get to some of the other restaurants and happenings. But for the most part, people come here to hang out here, play bocce, play cornhole, have some beers, watch a show. And also, we're actually hosting in this parking lot that you see here. We're actually going to be hosting a drive-in movie this week on Friday that Bears is hosting. So utilizing the parking lot and the off hours of the building to accommodate other use cases for the community. In this case, a drive-in movie theater. One feature that we kept on the building was the smokestack that was attached to the old Bigelow boilers. That's become an iconic piece for us, similar to the Colt smokestack, but we've got our own branding on there now, facing both the Amtrak and Metro North line, as well as the highway, so we've got good branding. The facade has some interesting design elements. This is one side of the building, and then this side here that you see is now looking like this. And so this particular part of the building was unoccupied until recently. It's about 10,000 square feet. And due to the demand of our co-working space in the building was originally designed to be 18,000 square feet. It had 72 private offices, 67 floating desks. And we opened it in May of 2018. We hit 100% occupancy by January that year, and held on to that 100% occupancy for 9 months. So we decided to increase the size and the footprint of the co-working space. So we've added 10,000. We're now at just shy of 30,000 square feet. So these 2 stories behind us have now been converted into additional co-working space. And it has lots of cool common areas. In addition to the private office spaces, this is one of the main community areas, the kitchen. We use it for events. You see lots of soft seating areas and cool design pieces using the natural lighting from what used to be the garage doors. And people are very, very comfortable. Our office spaces seat between 1 and what was our largest office space in co-working, which was 7 seats. It's now, I believe, 14 in the new space with some of the corner seatings. The other occupants of the building now include, so Connecticut Innovations headquarters is just finished or just finishing now. Obviously through COVID, there's been a bit of a slowdown, but they occupy about 10,000 square feet in a beautiful new facility. We have several small businesses outside of the co-working space that range from someone working on ACL replacements to we had one of our tech companies that our first patent in the building was for holographic eye testing through the Microsoft HoloLens, which is a mixed reality headset. We have Digital Surgeons, which is a former company that I built, which is a marketing agency and design and innovation firm. They occupy about 15,000 square feet and have a little over 40 people there. We built the Holberton School, which is part of the nonprofit that the district started under a new umbrella called the District Innovation and Venture Center. And then we searched for a learning partner that would help us really solve a single problem, which was to bring more talent for technology talent into the state of Connecticut as an attraction tool, both for companies coming in, starting, or for companies staying. And that facility is about 8,000 square feet. And so far we've had about 82 students go through that program, which we licensed as a nonprofit out of San Francisco and brought into the building. We have a fitness facility, which is a little over 15,000 square feet. and I thought I had a picture of it, but it seems to be missing. It's called the District Athletic Club. It's a pretty new concept in terms of fitness. It works as both an amenity for the building. All the tenants have free access to. Oh, hello. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
All right. Sorry, my computer seems to have changed cameras on me. So the fitness facility is a little bit of a different concept that we've created. It is open to and free to the users of the building. So the tenants, all of the tenants' employees, all the co-working employees. It also has a membership component to it for the public. So it has about 900 members. It has CrossFit, yoga, spinning, Olympic lifting classes, strength classes, HIIT classes, and then a general gym facility. So sort of a choose your own adventure. Fitness as a lifestyle type of approach, heavy on community. It unfortunately has been closed for a couple of months since the fitness facilities were one of the first things that the governor closed down. But we're pretty excited about the comeback. We're actually going to be going with one-on-one training out on in the outside workout area. So we have this huge turf for the fitness facility that we're going to be utilizing during the waiting for when the phase 2 or phase 3 fitness opening happens. But in totality, we have 111,000 square feet on 9.5 acres. We are 96% leased on that space. And I'd say we're just about approaching 96% built as well, so occupied. And we host about 600 people in the building in any given day throughout the different spaces. Impact Branding is another company. We have about 162 companies in total in the building today, and it's growing on every single day throughout even throughout COVID. We've been leasing up, mostly on the co-working side, but we're starting to have more activity on the office side as well as of the last couple of weeks.
Interesting. David, there's a question came from Larry Levere. He had a question on there's a transaction, there's a project you were looking at and moving forward on in Hartford. Is that still happening?
So we're looking at 2 different projects in Hartford. One is taking a really long time, and we expect it to continue to be pretty slow. And then the second project we pulled out of right in March, right when COVID-19 hit, we decided to pull out.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Go with Karen. Karen, good morning. And David, try to get that video back. We like looking at you versus that mugshot in front of the brick wall. Sorry.
Good morning, everyone. It's really strange not being able to see you all, but I'm glad to be here. My name's Karen Leica. My firm is CPG Architects. We're based in Stamford, Connecticut. And I'm here to talk to you about a project that we're working on right now. It's actively under construction in Stamford. And it's an interesting project in that it's a site that we have studied dozens and dozens of times over the last 10 years for different developers coming in to look at what the possibilities are with this site. The site, as you can see, there was a building built on it in 1905. This is the imagery that we were able to find regarding the building. The site was used by or built by the Atlantic Insulated Wire and Cable Company. They made wires and cabling. Their claim to fame is they built the first underground cable connection between Connecticut and New York via Long Island Sound. In addition, they made support wires for World War I gas masks, which I thought was quite interesting given where we are in the world today. The initial stats of the building were they were a 90,000 square foot building, 2 stories, and loft style industrial building, 14+ foot ceilings, and clearly a industrial building. Typical industrial building with large windows, beautiful ceiling, beautiful views. It's on the water in Stamford, on the East Harbor, and beautiful views to the south into Long Island Sound. Over time, the building transformed into this. It had all kinds of different pieces built onto it in an ad hoc way. Nothing very exciting about it. It became extremely polluted over time, and unfortunately developed into a toxic site. You can see by these images that it was mindlessly altered. It was just not thought about in a cohesive way by any means. By the 1940s, it was not in use by the Atlantic Cable Company any longer. It just became ad hoc use for different tenants. It really had no rhyme or reason. In the late 90s, it fell into disrepair, and much of it was vacant over time and had several ownership changes. So as I said, my firm came in looking at this site plan. You can see the building that we're talking about is on the lower left. And what we've done to it since we've been hired by my client called the Wheelhouse Properties. They are a media folks, I'll call them a media magnet based in Greenwich. And he bought this site about 3 years ago. Since then, we have been studying it extensively and came up with this site plan where we basically took the initial footprint of the building, which is the lower left, kept it largely intact. The problem with the site for so many of the different developers that looked at it, and it was looked at for a variety of uses. There was a museum, office, retail, rental, storage units. The problem with the site was it only had 1.7 parking spaces per 1,000. So clearly, as many of you know, that's a big problem. So we went through zoning and we got approval for this 4-story parking garage, which is roughly 400 parking spaces. And that allowed us a lot of opportunities with the site when we had that problem solved. So then once we got through that, we designed the building. We basically took it down to the bones. It was a 2-story building, as you can see by the structure here. We added a second, 2 additional stories to it and a small penthouse. So it is virtually a 4.5-story building. So as I said, it started out at about 90,000. It's now yielding just over 130,000 square feet. We completely gutted it. The cores were just so unrealistic, and I don't have any idea the rhyme or reason why they were placed where they were placed. So we made the building into a building that could be leased as a single or a multi-tenant, and it will be an office building primarily. Let's see, what else? So we cleaned up the site completely. It took forever, and there were lots of interesting findings when that was underway. But happy to say it's all capped and cleaned, and we are well under construction now. This image is a site, a view from the water. So this is looking west. To our left would be Long Island Sound. Bernadette, if you could just flip to the next. So, and this is the front view as you would be entering into the property. And the lower right, we just signed a lease with Cisco Brewery. So we're putting a brewery in there. And then you can see in the next image, the parking garage, which is reflecting very much the architectural style of the building. Let's see, the interior. So they're trying to to not only continue with the industrial style of the building, but to bring it into the interior, but make it a modern, hip type of a place. They're looking to attract creative type people. Not to say that they wouldn't entertain other types of tenants, but they're hoping that it could be a creative environment where it'll inspire people to come to work. So this is the interiors of the lobby. We'll show you a couple of other views. This is the other side of the lobby on the water side, and we're in the process of designing the restaurant. This is the exterior of the restaurant. We're now currently designing the interior of the restaurant, and there will also be fitness, a very, that's a 7,000, 8,000 square foot fitness center. And then on the roof deck, we have a quite a nice amenity for the tenants, as well as for the public in the evenings. So this was all very closely orchestrated with the city of Stamford, because there was some zoning issues that we needed to work through, and we fortunately have done that. So this is now yielding us 4.5 stories, 130,000 square feet, as I said, with the roof deck and outdoor bar. The MEP systems are all very high efficiency. We're looking to achieve LEED and well building, highly focused on the environment and energy efficiency. We were in the midst of the construction, obviously, when COVID hit. We haven't seen too many, we haven't run into too many obstacles. All in all, I think we're moving pretty well ahead. A couple of issues as it relates to getting some materials, but we think we've worked through that. So we're still on target for opening by the end of the year. We've signed a large tenant, ITV Americas. They're a media-based company out of UK. Signed a lease with them for a full floor. So it seems to be gaining some momentum, and we're pretty excited to be involved with it.
That's great. I'm sorry, Karen, you done there?
Yeah, that was pretty much it. Very excited to be involved. It's a reincarnation, so we're.
That was beautiful. I mean, that's a beautiful building. I mean, it's absolutely gorgeous.
It will be.
Couple questions that came from the group. One, and I think I'm going to ask this of others too when we get there. The obviously historic building, right? Is that under the historic register or anything like that? It's not. But obviously, okay. All right, but it's a rehab.
Thoroughly.
Yes. The cost of the final cost of the rehab as it compares if you were just tear those buildings down and just go from ground up. Do you know what that premium is?
There was a premium. I don't know exactly what it was. We did look at that. There were issues involved in doing that as it related to the contaminated site. And given that this is on the water and there's a marina there, it opened up a whole can of worms that might have been prohibitive if we did completely demo the building and start from scratch. So we chose not to do that.
Interesting. And you mentioned the LEED certification.
Mm-hmm.
Just curious, there's a question came through. Do you think there's only going to be a certification that's going to come out of this whole COVID crisis? Is there going to be another building certification?
You know, it's interesting that you say that, because the well building certification actually leans towards a lot of the things that COVID is all about, like bringing in more fresh air for people, like the whole idea of operable windows, which so many people frown upon in an office building specifically because of it wreaks havoc on the HVAC systems. That's a whole other thing that is being considered as a result of COVID. I can't tell you how many of my clients are saying, hey, what do we have to do to make these windows operable? And it's not that easy.
But so to back up, then there's an actual, what's it called? The well-being?
Well, there's several organizations. I think there's two actually. Well building, which is a certification or buildings outside of LEED as it relates to how to make buildings just cleaner to live in and make people happier in them. It's more focused on the human being versus the building systems. And then there's Fitwell, I think, is the other one. And correct me if I'm wrong, anyone on the panel, if you know better, but I believe that's the other one that is an accreditation.
Great. And so, thank you. And Bernadette, let's bring everybody up if we can. All right, to just start the open conversation here. Yeah, like everybody else, if they can, to chime in on that wellness. You go on a full screen there? Are we full screen, or is that Mike? That's my view. That was my view. Sorry, Bernadette. Challenges. So anybody chime in? I'm curious on the certification or this was one of the ideas of the certification, and is there, obviously there's more focus on it, but is there going to be a time, or is there a time where they're going to say, no, there's certification? Anybody else chime in? You're all dealing with a lot of different people. We've got students, we've got apartments, people live in apartments, we've got people in fitness centers, and we got typical office people.
Well, we hit the building standard with JCJ's tenant improvement in that one specific space, with the HVAC upgrades, with the air tech. I don't even know if they've even been through the finalization of the process, because it's quite a process, and we had to come in and test the air. There's a lot of things. It's even about how people move. It's the lighting near the windows goes down different than the lighting away from the windows. But that was a really interesting comment that you made about a new standard. And you wonder if this building standard will morph a little bit and become more popular, because it is the makeup air part. So operable windows is one way to do it. And we have primarily operable windows here, but they are frowned upon with HVAC balancing. So you can just ramp up your fresh air from outside as an alternative. And that's what building, that's one of the standards of that.
Great.
And the other thing I would add is the LEED standard is very difficult with a historic project like this. And we had a boiler house that was in place, and it was in place since 2005. None of those boilers met the new LEED standard. So even when JCJ tried to get it, oh, you're going to change out your whole boiler house? And I don't have to answer that. I think you know what the answer was. So some of it becomes difficult, but we're always doing things to, when you look at it, adaptive reuse is all about saving existing buildings and not filling landfills. And so there is this kind of environmentally friendly component of it, and you're cleaning up dirty sites and taking care of stuff. I mean, some of the stuff we bound in place, some of the lead, and you can actually bind it and keep it in place. You don't have to go dump it somewhere else. But now you've made it safe, you've rendered it safe, you put it back underground, you've covered it up, it's not leaching into the water. So there's things you can do and things that are challenging.
And Larry, I'm going to come back to you right after this, but I want to, do you think about the cost of for a historic project? Brian, you want to, can you tie in there with, obviously you're dealing with a lot of students. Pretty sensitive subject these days. What's from your standpoint when you redevelop the Hubble facility and forget, maybe even, okay, maybe if there's not a standard, although you can speak to that standard on the educational side and the rehab on the educational side, but maybe just even the institutional perspective, regardless of a federal mandate.
So that is the question that 7,000 people are asking daily, right? And so obviously universities are built to be high density locations, right? Everything in a university forces people together. And with COVID and the regulations, it's trying to flip that on its head and create separation. So it is a monstrous job that we're working on around the clock to sort of come up with strategies. And you're completely dependent on the virus, right? So the virus is in charge, the governor is in charge, and you've got sort of fixed start dates, and you've got to come up with 4 or 5 different strategies for how you're going to get there. Obviously, if you look at the spectrum, fully online is one option. And so President Kaplan, who many of you know well, is really a proponent of building a sort of parallel University of New Haven, one that is totally online to sort of complement the on the ground. We're very much hands-on experiential learning, which is the opposite of sort of the online model. In between is a mix where you might move in and out of the classroom. And so maybe if you've got a classroom of 20, you bring 10 on a Tuesday, and 10 take that same class via a module online, and then you flip it on Thursday. And so you're trying to keep in with the ratios that government is handing down. Alternatives would be, bust up the semester into 7-week chunks and bring smaller groups for 7 weeks and then rotate them through. It's truly an amazing feat that we've got to get accomplished in a short period of time. From the revenue side, if you go fully online, there's probably an expectation that the dormitories won't, or the residence halls, they hate it when I say dormitory, residence halls are not used. That's a financial center for the university that generates a lot of cash, and so that goes away. And if you're going to drop a significant amount of revenue off the books, you've got to drop a significant amount of cost. And so it's just really, frankly, a nightmare situation that every university is going through right now. That's a long answer to a short question, but at the end of it, I don't have a lot of answers, but we've got a lot of scenarios that we're trying to game plan.
You bet. You bet. Dave, what do you think from a design standpoint with your model? What does that, I like back up just a little bit. I'm gonna skip around a little bit here. You had an opportunity where you were. So one, what was the opportunity? What was the overriding opportunity for you to do what you did at District?
Can you rephrase the question, what you mean by overriding?
Yeah, what was the one that, was there one opportunity that you looked at that building and you said, this is the opportunity for District for me to do, an adaptive reuse project?
I think that for me, I come from a different perspective, right? Because I wasn't a developer, I wasn't a real estate guy. I'm really just a guy that understands the consumers and what people want. And I paid very close attention to that. I've done that for all different types of industries, B2B industries, B2C industries. So from my perspective, I sort of had a picture for a fitness facility that would support the community, a co-working space that was properly operated and properly designed, some learning facilities that would help on the talent side, a restaurant, a beer garden with an amphitheater, even just a beer garden. Those were just like very specific things that we believed going into this were just absolutely needed in this type of environment. So the fact that we figured it out and sort of placed it onto this building, that, it was a night in December of 2014 when we figured it out, was just sort of, I don't know if it was luck or right place, right time. I think that through the combination of the remediation dollars we got from the state, because the state owned the building, if it wasn't for that, the economics of this probably wouldn't have worked out. We probably would have been better off just knocking it down and building from scratch. But because of the dollars from the state and the fact that they, the previous administrations and owners of the building were negligent on the building, we were able to get a significant amount of dollars from that. That made the economics work so that we could save the building and ultimately do a service for the communities by, getting the product out of the ocean and getting the product out of the river that goes up and down to the sound, and cleaning things up. So I'd say it was all kind of lucky if you ask me.
I was going to say, you strike me as a guy that you would have run about a 6-month, couple $100,000 best use study. No?
No. 95% of the idea came in 10 minutes.
Got it. Okay, so before I roll back to Karen and Larry on some of these questions, the delta between the cost to rip it down and just put up a new one and doing what you did, yours is actually in reverse, right? It sounds like it was less expensive to do the rehab than it was if you were to tear it down.
Significantly less expensive. Yeah.
Like by what? We're not quoting you on it, but give me a percentage.
I'd say probably around 30 to 40% less.
Yeah. And did that include, was that number including abatements and things like that because you did a rehab, or that's just strictly?
No, so that's just our dollars. We got, so the numbers, just so everybody's aware, We originally had gotten $5.5 million from the state which handled the demolition of the back building, which was a roughly 95,000 square feet of building that we had to knock down in order to get into the ground and take the oils out. Then there was a little bit of overage there due to just the Connecticut Department, to DEEP asked us to do significantly more work than they had initially planned in the remedial action plan. So we had to go back into the ground or back into parts of the ground that we were not supposed to do. And it created another $500,000 that the state gave us in a interest-free forgivable loan. So that $6 million really set the stage for the rest of the project. The other thing was that we used a new market tax credit to do the deal. We didn't go historics because of how much of the building we were knocking down, but we were able to do a new market tax credit deal that creates an economic situation that actually is obviously much more favorable. So it puts you in a position where you're financing about, in our case, what looks like about $17 million, but it shakes out after the 7-year refi at about $14 million. And that makes the economics of the project very healthy.
Thank you. Thank you. Karen, wrapping back to you. So your project, what was the opportunity? What was the opportunity that jumped out in that project? What was the drive? I mean, you've got a lot of moving parts in that project. Was there one thing you look at that project and say, hey, yeah, this first you made a decision that if they made a decision, it's going to be a rehab versus a tear down. And then what were the other components that you saw the market opportunity to do an adaptive reuse of that particular site?
That question was posed to me, correct?
Correct. Yep. I'm sorry.
Great. Sorry, didn't hear that. Thought so. I think that the location in Stamford was primary. It is literally a 5-minute jaunt from the train. So it has easy access to transportation. It's on the water. It's like a win-win situation. The whole south end of Stamford is in a transformation and has been for several years. So this is just all part of what's going on in the south end of Stamford. So it has been viewed as it would just kind of ride the coattails of what BLT and the other developers have been doing in that market.
Yeah, sure. And back to Larry. So I don't know if you can even answer the cost on this one. I mean, that's such a massive project. What are your thoughts on cost? I can't imagine going in there. Well, number one, I can't imagine there was any thought of a tear down because the city and the state weren't going to allow you to tear it down, period, right?
Right. So it's pretty obvious the opportunity part of it. When you look at the costs, with the building itself, we're probably close to new construction for us. And because you have to follow all these guidelines and all that, it's probably close. But going back to David's point, you have tax credits that offset that and make it so it's something that makes it more attractive to investors. So now you go into the federal historic tax credit, which can be a 20% on your qualified rehabilitation expenses. You've got the state program as another 25%. So, but by the time you get done administering all that, I figure you get about 35% back in real cash at the end. But you know, it makes it work now compared, and you see even in Hartford, all these guys are reusing these buildings as opposed to building a new skyscraper type building because it is less expensive and because of the credits. When you add it together, it all works. Locations do too. But I would also say just when you go to like the industrial model, so we have this case where the industrial model is moving away from these old mills, right? But the new industrial model is going to be all about pre-built buildings and the quick, like I think someone was on the call yesterday mentioned that, but that logistics and all of that manufacturing that's going to probably come back here, there's going to be a lot of that coming back. Those buildings are going to be way cheaper to do on a new building cost basis. So, but when you're building maybe an apartment building or offices, and then, you know, the real estate professionals do all right on both sides because when the industrial moves over to new industrial building, they do all right there. And then we come and adaptively reuse this, and now you go back to office space. So, you know, it's good on both sides. It works. So the adaptive reuse is always away from industrial towards office, residential, educational, and retail.
As I wrote to my the guys in my company this morning. I said, remember, the only thing that the real estate community doesn't like is stagnation, and you can call this market anything but stagnant.
Yes, I agree.
So great opportunity. So when you know, this, we could, I thought, I wasn't sure we we're going to get 90 minutes in on this. We could get 180 minutes in on this. All four of you, when I get into the project, and when Mark Duclos goes into the project, I'm sure I just buy it, and I don't have the intuition that David's got. I just, you know, it's, put it this way, it's not as dead on sometimes, maybe. I buy it, and then you start putting a shovel in the ground, or you start getting your approvals, and you say, oh shit, what did I get into? Give me two or three things that jump out as to you when, so our viewers are looking and they're giving advice or they're looking to do this, that jumped out at you. And they don't have to be things that you look for in every project, but specific to your project, what did jumped out and you just did not think you're going to have to deal with it? I'll start with Brian.
Well, again, I'm just the user, and obviously we're in, for us as a business school, that's 15 minutes away from the main campus shuttles. I deal with more shuttle questions than I know what to do with. There's also limits to the amount of people that we can bring into the building because of local town restrictions and septic related issues. So I know too much about septic, busing, and town politics than I should.
So I think just to add one more, I think if I remember in our original conversation, you had talked about the replication of services, right? That you're 15 minutes away and you needed to actually replicate services in that building that you had back on campus. That's true.
I think that those issues were dealt with from the get-go, though. I think you do need that. The students are there for 8 hours, and so you need everything that they would want, whether that be the food, but also in terms of student services, we have a lot of what we call one-stop shops. So whatever your issue is, you can come into a particular location in the building and we'll get you an answer. Perhaps it might not be on the spot, but we'll connect you with the right person. So you do need to replicate on a small scale some of the main services that are on the main campus.
All right. David?
Could you repeat the question one more time, please?
I can't repeat it verbatim, but the gist of it is that you're getting into your project at District. You're looking at Hartford, right? And but let's use District as an example. What jumped out was you just said, "Oh boy, didn't think of that."
I mean, not much. I mean, we went in. We were very fortunate in the fact that we didn't the phase. There was a phase 1, 2, and a partial 3 that was already done in the building that was paid for by the state of Connecticut when we bought the building. So, and we hired the same firm that did that. So there were very little surprises on the remediation. And I think that's the big scary part. At least that's what I learned, because all the banks ran away from me and no one would answer the phones. So I think that that wasn't terrible. I think the big aha for me was really not about the building itself, was more about the vision of the building. My interpretation was that walking people around and showing them architectural renderings and telling them these great stories was enough to show people vision. And what I learned is that not many people actually can see your vision, and they actually need to see the facility. And that was sort of shocking to me, in the fact that it became sort of a chicken or egg situation, because banks want to see you leased up before you build, and they don't want you building speculatively. I wasn't prepared for that, but luckily we had enough owner occupancy in this particular building to sort of move us along, and that was helpful. Once the building opened, literally just the first couple spaces, I think when we had 30,000 square feet of the 111 open, people started to walk through the door. And that's when the game changed. And that's when all of a sudden everybody's lights went off and said, wow, this is a project I want to be a part of. I want to move here. And lease up since then has been like very, very easy. People come there and they're just like, I want in.
Yeah. It's funny, and it's and I'll continue the question there, but it's funny, the overall view that I've heard is that activity, and obviously this doesn't fit into Brian's world, but the activity on all three projects is actually reasonably good, which is great to hear. I think everybody feels that the bottom fell out, but not. Now I know there's an influence. Well, actually, I was going to say there's a Fairfield influence or a New Haven influence here, but no, Larry, you're up in Hartford. So, Karen, your thoughts on that? What?
I think that my client went into it eyes wide open. They knew that they had a we kept calling it his baby, and when you looked at that baby, it was hideous, and he knew he was getting into. I think the one thing that I would advise on is, especially if you're on the water or close to it, the implications related to that as it relates to the EPA. And I think the one thing that was a surprise to me, it might not have been to them, was the amount of work that went into restoring the bulkhead. And we needed to create a pedestrian walkway there on the water to connect other points in the area. And that was known, but the extent of work that had to go into it might have been a little bit of a surprise, because not only did we need to have the pedestrian walkway, we needed to have a marina. We actually have a marina. They now own a marina. So there's just a few interesting tidbits that came from this. But in terms of the activity, if I could just add to that, since COVID, the amount of activity that they are seeing is tremendous in this site. So it's, hopefully it will be for all of us.
Agreed. You're here. Larry.
So unfortunately, I could talk another 90 minutes about things that jumped out at me at Cole over the 14.
I said 2 or 3.
I'll just go with one, and the last one.
That works.
The last thing that just happened that kind of caught me off guard was when we did the shop drawings for the windows in this North Armory, and I alluded to it earlier how it delayed my schedule significantly, and that hit us financially. And then all of a sudden this comes along and doesn't speed anything up. So when you look at surprises, there's just always going to be surprises. And they had a new person doing the review at National Park Service, and they decided they didn't like a detail on the windows that we have in other places here, and they just decided they don't like it. So we really squirmed for months, and we actually had to change window manufacturers to come up with a better detail, and then they wanted us to change it again. And so that was the last surprise that kind of kicked me in the teeth, if you will. But, you know, we got through it. We always do. But there's always surprises at projects like this.
Great.
They're not usually great ones.
Yeah, no. Surprises.
Sometimes there's good ones, but there's a lot that are tough. And always with remediation, restoration of buildings, rehabilitation, all of these things are always going to come with these kind of surprises. And then trying to meet the restrictions that you have to meet to get the tax credits, that sometimes costs more money and takes more time. And it's tough. The approval process is very difficult.
Very seldom good surprises, right?
Sometimes.
So listen, so we're close to the end, and I don't want to press too close to it, but as you guys know, we had a whole outline of things, and we've hit a few of those, not all of them, but which was great because the audience has actually been driving some of this conversation. But I want to talk about future design, and I'm going to give the same question, but 4 different focuses. So I want to talk about what you know. There's a lot of projections. I don't want to get too much into projections because these projections change. But, you know, what do you know now that you need to do in your projects in response to the crisis? So we've already talked about the idea of LEED and all that stuff and well-being and all that, but I'm going to give 4 different sets of uses, and I just want to see what your quick opinion is on what you know you need to do. So Brian, I know you, there's a lot of questions whether students are coming back on campus or not. Let's assume they are. So we'll just go with the assumption there. What do you know now that you need to do, let's call it in the classrooms, to adapt?
Yeah, so I'm not sure we actually know what we need to do to adapt, but there's clearly going to be, and the president, by the way, is on the commission, the governor's commission for opening up higher education. So Steve Kaplan is the only private university president, the longest serving private university president in Connecticut, to be on the commission. And so we'll comply, and whatever that is, whether that's a 6-foot distancing or some other measure. So I think it's not known, but it will be. I just treat it as it's a constraint that you've got to optimize within. I think the bigger thing for a university is to take this crisis and do things, perhaps visioning things that you had been thinking of, and really plow ahead through it. And so don't let the crisis get a hold of you. Take it as an opportunity to become better as a university or better as a business, and look at all the opportunities that this particular crisis presents to you, so that you can come out of the other side stronger. For us, College of Business, a stronger university and a stronger business. And I think all of those are real opportunities that everyone has sitting right in front of them. So take advantage of it.
Okay. I mean, but if I'm there today, and just a quick point, if I've got a classroom, I've got to know that classroom's going to be at least half occupancy. Is it a fair statement?
Perhaps, again, I go back to the virus is in charge, right? I think everyone knows that if there's a vaccine, that solves a lot of these problems. We will open, and so there was a question in the chat, are you going to open? We're definitely opening. It's a question,
okay.
How are we opening?
Okay, I'm glad you
whether that is, Notre Dame, I think you might have seen yesterday announced they're going to come back 2 weeks early, and in November, if the traditional, you talk to the epidemiologists, and I know too much about that word and what it means now relative to what 6 or 8 weeks ago. But I think there hasn't been a virus like this that didn't have a second wave. So if there's no vaccine, there will be a second wave. Will it be in the winter? And if it's likely the winter, do you sort of reprogram to move everything forward so that you can get a good shot at it and then have to go back online in the winter? So we'll do what needs to be done. Health and safety is number one. It's the top priority for the university, and it'll be the safest campus possible if everyone is going to be on the ground.
Thank you, David. When you look at your co-working, obviously a hot subject, and we've got. I'm not telling everybody to keep it too short, but we want to get a good answer. But when you look at co-working, what do you know you need to do in your facility today to respond to the new norm?
Well, I think in general, bigger than co-working, just the whole facility is.
Yeah, but I just want the co-working segment.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So so we're treating the whole building the same though. So I think we have, we've installed a ton of hand sanitizer stations. We've created directional walkways throughout the facility. We're doing temperature checks. We've contacted Stanley Black & Decker. We've ordered touchless door systems, so no one has to actually touch anything. Electrostatic sprayers for disinfectants, so we can run disinfectants, and really just doing what we can to make sure the mental, so both the health and well-being, but also the mental health and well-being of our community is there to keep things going. And to be honest with you, so far, I mean, we've gotten a tremendous amount of demand. I think the most important thing I think people are trying to hear is like, will people from New York move to other cities now? And we've actually just landed our first client. A small media company is moving their department into districts. So about 14 people will be entering in from a pretty large media company. So that's the sign of what's to come.
I think you felt too, just correct me if I'm wrong, your operation, you didn't feel you were kind of shoulder to shoulder in that operation in the first place, right?
What did you say that again?
I mean, that the density in your particular facility wasn't overwhelming, that there was a little bit of elbow room. I mean, there's some of these places incredibly dense, right? I think if I remember hearing you back in March, it seems like last March, but just density wasn't there.
Yeah, no, I mean, we have a lot of people, but we've designed it in such a way where it's not, where people aren't on top of each other. One of the things that we made a decision, we studied co-working for almost 2 years. My COO did a dissertation for her MBA on co-working spaces. So it's not like we were just throwing desks in a building in an empty space. We were really thoughtful about design to begin with, and as well as technology and common spaces. So we overloaded the private spaces. In 18,000 square feet. We had 72 private offices built in, rather than having a tremendous amount of open bullpen space. In fact, we've already sort of closed off some of our bullpen space because companies have gone in and grown so large that they've taken bullpen spaces, and we've actually glassed them off to make larger office spaces within co-work. So we're pretty happy with where we are today.
Karen, on the restaurant side, anything that David said that's different on the or additional on the restaurant side that you could think of?
Well, it's interesting because we're working through that right now as we speak. We're speculating. We don't really know. I mean, we understand that we'll be occupying less on an interim basis, but I think that most are taking an aggressive approach. We're going to design the restaurants for the way we would, and in short term, occupy it differently.
Yeah. I
think just to add on the office size, because we do a lot of office interiors for many corporate clients, and I'm hearing de-densify. The driver has been to more or less bring the square feet per person down in the past 10 years. And now they're looking at changing that, and whether it is to de-densify or allow more people to work from home or reduce their overall footprint, that remains to be seen.
Give me a number. So everybody's using different numbers. What's the per square feet per person minimum today?
We're looking at many of our clients were in like the 150 square feet per person range.
No, I'm saying to be.
Oh, to be. I would guess it would be in the 250 range.
You think it's at
250 square feet per person, like the old days. I mean, it wasn't that long ago. We were there.
Thank God you got more parking.
Yeah.
Larry, so I'm going to be more direct in the question. More studios or more two-bedroom apartments? We got a lot of at-home work. So you're building more studios or more two-bedrooms?
So we did notice in the North Armory that we're leasing up as we speak, that I think Colt Gateway in itself just inherently lends itself to a little more space for everybody as opposed to downtown. And in our apartments, that's the case as well. Our apartments on the square foot basis are a little bit bigger. Now we're building more apartments in U-shape, and I have decided to change the design to reduce the amount of studio apartments and make more of the one bedroom with den or apartments that have bigger space. And if people feel like they might get stuck social distancing, they have a little space where if they're in their apartment, they have a little separation space, if you will. So I think people are looking favorably at larger apartments, just like Karen mentioned about the office space, that it's just going to be a little more square foot per person. And I think that's what some of our commercial tenants will probably do as well.
Thank you. So we've got one last question. It's one word. Moving forward, are you bullish or bearish on Connecticut? Brian?
It depends.
No. It's one classic. One word. There's no qualification.
Always, I'm an economist, always bullish long term.
You got it. Thank you. David?
Can I say boorish?
No. No. God, no.
I'm bullish. Always am.
Aaron?
Bullish.
Larry?
No hesitation. Bullish.
We are good to go then. Listen, thank you all for everything, for all your time, your effort. I know the preparation, and I very much thank you. Art, did you have anything you wanted to say?
Just a quickie, Mark, thank you very much for moderating this, for organizing it. And I think that this topic is so apropos. We're working to repurpose our businesses, ourselves, and our projects right now in our world. And the energy from the panelists in the optimism is great to see and hear. Thank you very much, guys.
Thanks all. Everybody, thank you for being there as sponsors as well. And just very much thank you. And everybody be safe. We're all reopening in Connecticut. Be safe. I know we want to do business, but do it the right way. Bernadette, thank you. Be good, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.